everybody. My name is Andrew Sagan. I am the Executive Director of Phi Alpha Delta Law Fraternity International. It's my honor to be here today with you all, and welcome to the 30th Annual Phi Alpha Delta Pre-Law Conference. We're so thrilled to have this event for you in this virtual format, and I'd like to just say this is my 21st pre-law conference, so I feel that I've kind of seen you all go all the way through, and some actually end up being my boss on the board of directors some days. As all of you know, that this has been a very challenging year with many changes in all of our lives, our schools, our work, and our fraternity. Pivoting to a virtual pre-law conference would not even be possible without our fantastic speakers, our many schools and our law schools and vendors that are a part of the Law Expo, and most importantly, you all. Thank you for being with us. At this conference, we have over 350 attendees, which includes students, speakers, law schools, and vendor representatives. Another huge significant number is that we have over 75 pre-law chapters represented at this year's conference, which is a new fraternity record. I know that it takes a lot of work, coordination, and fundraising for each of you to get here, especially this year, so please give yourself a virtual round of applause for making it to our conference. In addition to our student attendees, we have representatives from over 70 different law schools and vendors. You can network with these representatives throughout the entire conference, and we'll be talking more about that later. So definitely be sure to take advantage of that through the Whova app. Again, we'll be talking a little bit more about this later, but if you ever need resources from PAD, please reach out to us. We have built several new resources to operate virtually and a robust online speaker series, which can all be found on our YouTube channel and at pad.org. In addition to the great programming for this conference, we have a lot of content the entire month of November. It's simply incredible. We'll also touch on that later too. I would now like to recognize our International Justice, John McKell, to say a few words. John McKell.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Pre-Law Conference. As Andrew said, my name is John McKell. I'm your International Justice. I'm the chair of the Board of Directors of Phi Alpha Delta Law Fraternity International, and like Andrew, I've been around about 21 years. Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate your participation. This is our pre-law program. Is a fantastic program that's seen over 85,000 members join since its inception. We are here to help you make the most informed decision about whether to go to law school. And we're also here to help you create a bridge between law school and alumni and the pre-law program. That helps you increase your personal network and also create friendships that will last a lifetime. I'm really excited about all the hard work that the executive office staff have done to help you have a great program over the next couple days. A lot of great speakers, a lot of opportunities, and additionally, probably most important for you all in the near future, a career center on pad.org. So I know you don't want to hear from me anymore. Thank you again for being here. And I'm going to turn it over to our executive office staff member, Liz Dunlap. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, John. Hello, everyone. My name is Liz Dunlap, and some of you may know me as the Pre-Law Operations Coordinator that you have been in contact with, or also known as prelaw@pad.org. I am so excited for this year's 2020 Pre-Law Conference and the amazing programming that we have scheduled for you. From our workshops and keynotes to our Law Expo, we promise that this conference will have much to offer you. I have to say, even though this year is virtual, we've seen an increase in the number of students registered compared to previous years, just like Andrew had mentioned. I know I've seen some names and faces in attendance from chapters such as Temple University, Boston University, Pontifical Catholic University of Puerto Rico, So welcome once again to each and every one of you, and I hope that you'll get to soak up every little bit that Pre-Law Conference has to offer this year. Thank you to the PAD Foundation for providing scholarships and funding for this year's conference. With your support, we have been in the position to make this year even more accessible to our pre-law students. And to pre-law students, I know that this year is virtual and isn't the typical format for the conference, but luckily, thanks to the technology that we have today, we have the opportunity to still connect and see each other in real time. I encourage you to use these 2 days to network with fellow PADs, schedule any virtual meetups with each other, and possibly even make new friends. You never know, the people that you meet at this conference might end up becoming some of your best friends and even mentors down the road. One last thing before I go, conference swag packs will ship after the conference to those who paid for their registration or purchased one separately. The swag packs include the conference t-shirt and giveaways from our sponsors. For those who wish to purchase one, they are also available on the online store. So if any of you have questions about the conference, swag packs, or just general pre-law operations related questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me via Whova or my email, prelaw@pad.org, and I'm happy to assist. So with all of that said, please enjoy. I hope you all have a wonderful time. And now I'll turn it over to my colleague, Emily Baranowski.
Hey everybody, I'm Emily. I'm Phi Alpha Delta's Deputy Director. To echo Andrew, John, Liz, we are so excited to welcome you all to the 2020 Pre-Law Conference. I hope everyone's been getting used to Whova this morning over the last few days. Definitely just think of that as our landing page for the conference. As a reminder, Whova is available as a web page and as an app. If you have any tech issues with the app portion, please contact Whova support. The best way to do that is the help button in the upper right-hand corner of the app. If you or someone you know is having trouble accessing Whova, the sessions, any of the workshops, please contact Executive Office staff. You can directly message us through the app on the Ask Organizers Anything thread, send us an email, or give us a call at the Executive Office. As a reminder, our number here is 410-347-3118. To access all of our events, just use the live stream button that is linked in the session details. Remember that the Whova app is going to list all of the sessions in your own personal time zone. However, everything listed on our agenda emails and on pad.org is listed in US Eastern Time. As many of you guys have seen already, Whova allows you to ask questions about your workshops, interact with your fellow attendees, and network with the law school representatives all virtually. There are designated discussion threads for each workshop, as well as many other threads that we've seen pop up in the last few days on things like recruitment, law school admissions, being a first-generation law student, taking the LSAT, you name it, I've seen it, and I only expect that it's going to grow in the next couple days. We also have a thread in there for some of our upcoming PAD events, and I do want to point out one of our very exciting next events that's taking place after this conference, and that is PAD Founders Day and Founders Week. That kicks off at 6 p.m. Eastern Time this Friday, so literally as this conference ends, Founders Week kicks off, and on that time on Friday at 6 p.m., we're going to start a 58-hour Founders Week virtual social hall. This event is being hosted by some really fantastic PAD volunteers from all across the country, literally from Key West, Florida to Sitka, Alaska. We've got everybody in there. We're going to keep it going through the weekend, and that's going to actually end at 4 a.m. on Monday. So that's a huge amount of time. And we encourage you guys after this conference to go ahead and join the social hall. Learn a little bit more about Phi Alpha Delta, network with some of the people you've met, plus some of the law students and attorneys that are part of PAD. I do want to point out that there's a special pre-law history section taking place at 7:30 tomorrow night. So make sure that you guys join that if you want to learn a little bit more about the history of PAD's pre-law program. Next week, Founders Week is packed with even more programming, all free to commemorate PAD Founders Day, and you can find more info about that on our website. But before we get too far into Founders Day week, we obviously have this conference. So we're really excited, and so I just have some quick reminders about the schedule for today and tomorrow. After our announcements wrap up this morning, we're going to have our first plenary speakers, Dean Michelle Heck and Dean Jessica Fonseca-Nader, who will present Law Admissions Behind Closed Doors. Make sure you have downloaded the PDF materials for the session, which are linked in Whova. There are 2 documents in there. At 3 p.m. Eastern Time today, the workshops will begin. We've got some really fantastic sessions lined up for this afternoon. A quick reminder that the Power Score workshops, there's one today and there's one tomorrow, are taking place on Blackboard. So if you haven't used Blackboard, take a few minutes to go check out the session details on Whova and make sure you've got that downloaded. After the workshops, the Law Expo will take place from 4:30 to 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. Don't forget that even though the expo is this afternoon, you can network with law school representatives throughout the entire conference. I'll turn things back over to Andrew for a minute so he can chat a little bit more about networking with the law schools this afternoon.
Sure. Thank you, Emily. I just want to thank all the law schools and vendors for making this even possible. So give yourself a round of applause. It's so great to see so many familiar faces, though usually I'm moving their boxes around the exhibit hall in Washington, D.C. But today we begin at 4:30 and goes to 6:30 for the Law Expo. Again, we have over 70 plus law schools and vendors. Some law schools are offering application fee waivers. There's some promotions and giveaways on some of their booths and discounts on LSAT prep. And they're also offering breakout sessions and more. So once you visit the exhibitor hall and you click on the law school or the vendor, you can see exactly how to go ahead and engage with each and every vendor. You can create a question and answer. Some of them are offering the Zoom meetings during that time between 4:30 and 6:30. And it's an amazing way to get a lot of information from these folks. They have been working with their law schools for several years, and to have that experience right at your hands will really help out. Again, included in each booth can be various information, but informational materials from law schools with great video links, representative information, their contact information, and you can actually meet one-on-one with each of these folks. While visiting the booth profile, you can actually hit something called send inquiry, and also send direct messages by actually just saying hi, and those people can reach back out to you so you can engage with them as well. If for some reason you can't get to all of the schools, which is going to be very challenging because you have 2 hours during a certain amount of time, remember that our Whova app is going to be available for 6 months after. But if you want to schedule a meeting by communicating and saying hi in the Whova platform with the representatives, they will arrange times to meet with you on a one-on-one basis or a group, or maybe even if you want them to speak at a chapter event. I think that's a great way to encourage that type of programming. Again, if you have any questions about the expo or anything as you go through this, please ask us on the Whova app or call us at the office, and we look forward to your engagement. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. I hope everyone's able to meet with plenty of law schools over the next couple days and even in the next couple weeks. So before we kick off today's plenary session, Law Admissions Behind Closed Doors, we're actually going to start with something a little bit more fun. Not that law admissions isn't fun, but we really want to take a minute to honor some of the fantastic work that our pre-law chapters have done over the last year. We're going to do that by announcing our pre-law programming award winners for the 2019-2020 school year. Please note that our presentation today is only the first place winner of these awards, but we're going to be posting a full list of winners on pad.org after the conference, and we'll be announcing additional award winners tomorrow during the conference closing. So without further ado, hold on with me 1 second while we share our programming award winners for 2019-2020.
be brief. I just wanted to recognize Dean Fonseca-Nader from my alma mater, St. Thomas University School of Law. It's a wonderful little law school, Catholic law school in Miami, Florida, and I hope you will all consider it. Dean Nader is a fantastic advocate for students, a great supporter of Phi Alpha Delta, and I didn't want to pass up the opportunity to say thank you very much for all you do, Dean. Over.
Thank you, John. And yes, as he said, thank you to Dean Fonseca-Nader and to Dean Heck. Everyone, you guys have just been huge supporters of the pre-law program. We're excited to have you back for another year to be presenting with us. Before I turn it over to you two, I do just want to make sure that everyone who doesn't know Dean Heck and Dean Fonseca-Nader do know a little bit about their history. So Dean Heck is the Associate Dean of Admissions at the University of Richmond School of Law. Prior to joining Richmond Law in 2019, she spent 13 years as the Director of Admissions and Financial Aid at the University of Missouri School of Law. During her time in law school admissions, she has served as Vice President and President of the Midwest Alliance of Law School Admissions, on the Planning Committee for the Midwest Association of Pre-Law Advisors and Mink Law Day, and on committees and panels with the Law School Admission Council. Presenting with her is Dean Jessica Fonseca-Nader. She is the Assistant Dean for Enrollment and Scholarships, as John pointed out, at the St. Thomas University School of Law in Miami, Florida. Dean Fonseca-Nader has been with St. Thomas Law since 2006. Before joining the St. Thomas Law faculty, Dean Fonseca-Nader served as career law clerk to the Honorable David L. Levy and later to the Honorable Barbara Lago at the 3rd District Court of Appeals. Dean Fonseca-Nader has extensive experience in civil litigation support and appellate practice. She has also worked in firms as an associate and special counsel. Dean Fonseca-Nader has taught legal research and writing, advanced legal writing, appellate advocacy, and art of lawyering. Dean Fonseca-Nader has served on many LSAT and pre-law association committees and panels. As a student, Dean Fonseca-Nader was a member of Nova Southeastern University's PAD pre-law chapter, so she was sitting right in all the seats you all are sitting in today, and at St. Thomas University School of Law's PAD chapter, the Soya-Menchikoff chapter. She's currently the faculty advisor of the Soya-Menchikoff chapter at St. Thomas University School of Law. Dean Heck, Dean Fonseca-Nader, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Emily. Can I ask one more? Oh, you just switched it over. All good. So welcome everybody. I can say on behalf of Dean Fonseca-Nader and I, we are very excited to be with you guys today. But one thing is, this is a very interactive session. I strongly encourage you to turn your cameras on. We don't care what your background is. We would rather see your smiling faces. But to get the most out of today, it's really going to be an interactive time. We're going to spend time talking to each other. We're going to spend time talking about files. And so we really hope by the end of today, you guys are set and ready to go. So we did send out the files ahead of time, but I am also throwing them in the chat for you guys. If you give me just a second. While I am doing that, there's going to be 2 different documents I will tell you. One that is, these are the same files that you saw ahead of time, but if you didn't have a chance to grab them off of the platform and stuff, we're going to send them your way. Hold on just a second. That is one of them. You should see the other one coming through right now. So these are the 2 sets of PDFs we're going to use today. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dean Fonseca-Nader to kind of get started. And one thing I will go ahead and do as she's talking about some of this, Dean Fonseca-Nader, do you want to share your screen or do you want me to share my screen on this one?
You share your screen.
Okay.
You're just so much better at it.
Okay, here we go.
Thank you, Michelle. Dean Heck. Everybody, thank you for having us today. We hope that you enjoy the presentation and we hope to really engage with you all in learning about the admissions process and really what goes through the minds of the members of the committee. In a lot of ways, you'll be members of these committees today, so you'll be reviewing these files. That's why we share them with you. That's why we'll continue to share them with you. But what I want to do at this time is take a look at Goofy's file, and what we're going to do is kind of show you what is in the applications that the law schools receive. So there's basically 2 parts. There's the application, which comes from the schools, and most schools, for the most part, will ask the same general questions. there are many times in terms of what they ask you that will be different. So you should read every question and make sure that you're providing the schools with what they're asking you for. The other part of the application process includes your personal statement. And some schools will ask you very directed questions or prompt that you should respond to. Some schools are more general. So make sure you're aware of that in completing your personal statement. Other parts of the application is the addendum if necessary, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes, and also the resume. In addition to that, there is the CAS report. So many of you have heard about the Credential Assembly Service from LSAC. That's what this CAS report is. And the law schools will receive this summary report that includes an analysis of your transcripts, information about you, every single school that you went to, how many letters of recommendations you submitted. With the report, we did not include this piece, but we want you to understand everything that's included in that. In the report is also all of your transcripts for every institution. The writing sample that comes from LSAC, and I do want to just highlight that writing sample is important. I would tell you, legal writing background, I look at that writing sample. If somebody's on the fence, that writing sample most of the time is what's going to make or break it, because it's the true reflection of what you did in a timed situation. In addition to the writing sample are the letters of recommendations from your recommenders. So with that is all of the parts of the application. Dean Heck, I'm not sure if there was anything you wanted to add to that piece.
I'll just add a little bit. So this cover report, what we know as the CAS report and stuff as a law school, this front page is going to give us a lot of valuable information. So as you're looking through files today, I want to point out a couple of things of interest. First off, you're going to see some self-explanatory over on the left-hand side, just information, biographical information on the left-hand side. On the right are going to be institutions attended. But then you'll notice all these numbers. You're going to see under the school degree, this actually lets us know at this institution, so in this case, Martin Luther College, based on LSAT scores and GPAs, what the normal range and stuff is. So if this is an undergraduate institution we're not as familiar with, this gives us the opportunity to learn like how others at the same institution do on the LSAT, as well as with that major, how they do on their GPA. When we go down a little bit farther for each candidate, it's going to break down for us all of the different institutions they've attended and hours and grades based on different academic years. So you can see it gives you each academic year, gives us an overall summary of the GPA, and scrolling down one box farther actually gives us the information overall of how many A's, how many B's, how many C's, and so on. As many of you may know, LSAC does give credit for pluses and minuses. So sometimes we see those GPAs change, especially down in that cumulative GPA box. It may be a little bit different than what you're accustomed to if you have multiple schools that you're sending transcripts. Lastly, a couple things as admissions committee members you should know today is over on the left-hand side at the bottom, it's going to be that LSAT data. How many times the individual has taken the LSAT, what that score band kind of looks like, and gives you all of that important information. And then lastly, over on the right, something to point out, which we're not going to have on the files today, is if they had attended another law school, it would show us what law school they had attended and prior matriculation information. So again, we would normally have the transcripts, but this kind of gives you a look today so you can see if there's upward grade trends or downward grade trends and all of that information. So with that, what we're going to do next is we are actually going to put you guys in breakout rooms. So it looks like right now we have about 100 of you. So we're going to break you down into pretty small breakout rooms. What I say, we're going to have about 4 or 5, I will say, in the breakout rooms. What we want you to do, we're going to give you about 8 minutes. And what we want you to do is to look at the files. Look at the files overall, if you were trying to, some of you have already looked at them, I know, because I've heard from some of you all, but look so that when we come back as a group, we are going to be able to carry on a conversation about each file and some of the things you found positive and negative about these files. Things that you saw, things that you liked. Hopefully this will show you things about your own file that you should do a little bit different. So again, we're going to give you about 8 minutes to cover. There are 6 total files, 4 in the first PDF, 2 in the second. So I am opening up the breakout rooms. So you guys should have buttons and head that direction. Okay, everyone. Well, we have learned a lot during COVID. We all thought we knew a lot about Zoom. Evidently, this Wovia platform that we're on today, when you log in through that, it deletes the opportunity to do breakout rooms. So something we did not realize. No one was having technical. This is something we just learned. We will share with Pat because we may have other problems during the conference. But that's okay. We're just going to switch gears. So first off, I'm going to put back in the chat for everybody these files. They are on the Wova platform under the documents for today's session, but I'm going to load them in one more time just in case you have not gotten them or you joined late, because they don't appear when you come in late to the chat. So both set of files and stuff are in there. Some of you may have had the opportunity to have great conversations in that breakout room. And if you did, I'm very excited. If you didn't, it's okay. It's okay. We're going to pretend we're just a really, really large admissions committee today in voting on files. So all 100 of us will make a decision and stuff on that file today. Okay, so first up, we're going to kind of walk through the first couple of files a little bit slower because I know this was a new process for you to kind of go through these files. So the very first file we kind of looked at was Goofy as kind of a quick overview. Now you have 2 ways to participate today. We are monitoring the chat, or if you would like to raise your hand, we will call on you. And to raise your hand, if you're not familiar, under that participant button at the bottom of your screen, if you open it, there will be a raise your hand button. So what did you guys see about Goofy today? Anybody? What did you see? What did you like? What did you not like? What did you see? Sophia, how about you first? Did I lose Sophia?
Well, Kai put in here academic probation.
Okay.
Okay, good observation. Sophia can't unmute. Sophia,
Okay.
you can join in the chat room. And we have 2 participants with their hands raised. Alejandra? Alejandra Rodriguez? You can't unmute. Okay, we may have to give access to unmute.
We're just finding all kinds of things with Wova today. Hold on.
Oh, wait. Okay, try now. Sophia, are you able to unmute yourself now? Wait. Okay. This should allow all of you to unmute yourself. Okay, Alejandra said she noticed a low G.
It works.
Go ahead, Sophia. Awesome.
No, that my group noticed about the resume. We made a lot of focus on the resume, on how like Goofy's resume was really unprofessional, like with all the colors, and I don't know, like he had a lot for under experience, but it wasn't descriptive enough, you know, like it wasn't enough to like say like what skills he actually developed from his jobs.
Okay.
I don't know, we got really focused on the resume because we were like, this does not look good. And there was no summary of who he was as like a person or like what he strives for. So that was a big emphasis that like we noticed. And the education didn't talk about like a lot of personal things. I don't know. I don't think it gave a good overview of who he was as a candidate.
Okay. Anything else about the resume since some of you are in there? Camille?
Yeah, I noticed that he said his objective was to be admitted to a top law school, and I feel like that's not something you should say.
Good point.
I feel like there's a lot of white space throughout the page, and I feel like that's a big no-no. And there's a second page and a third.
Right. So not very careful, didn't look over the resume very carefully. I think there might be a couple of typos there, including on the email. Anybody else want to add anything about the resume?
I feel like he was on academic probation
Okay.
so many times.
Oh, there you
I
go.
noticed he placed a personal email that wasn't very professional. I believe it's called Goofy is Cool. And I don't think you should use that in an application. And also I noticed there was a lot of questions he left unanswered, but still decided to put not applicable on some and then left others in blank. I think that if he didn't want to provide that information, which he should, but if he didn't want to, he should have put not applicable.
Ava?
I think the essay was very unprofessional. It didn't seem to tell very much of himself and his experience. It was just very unprofessional wording and needed to be a little bit more telling of who he is and why he's a good candidate.
Okay. Dustin?
Yeah, hi. I don't know if I just couldn't find it, but under the applicant status section, he never answered the question as to why he was applying to the School of Law. He just didn't answer it. I could be going crazy, but like on the second page of the PDF.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It was question 10. And it says, please provide a brief explanation of why you're applying to Newcomer School of Law. And he just didn't. I feel like that's probably really important.
You think? Alejandra, anything else?
I just wanted to comment back on the resume, how under his skills, they're pretty just broad, and the experience that he's had, nothing really tells us what he accomplished in each position. He has a lot of positions listed and a lot of experience, but we don't really get to know anything about what his work was there or how he really accomplished anything.
Okay. Nicola?
Yeah, it's Nicola, and under academic probation, when it has a little description on where you can kind of explain yourself, it's very vague, and he only goes into one sentence of saying, like, 10 years later, I'm a completely different person, but never giving examples on how he adapted his studying in order to achieve better grades.
I do want to jump in on that. If you're going to include an addendum, whether it's explaining academic probation or explaining a character and fitness question, I think there's one of the files, we'll see it later. Make sure that you are responsive to what additional information the school is asking for, and make sure you're providing a complete picture of it. So think about, if you didn't know yourself, you'd want to explain why were you on academic probation, obviously because your grades fell below where they needed to be, but is there a reason why they fell below where they needed to be? What did you do to address it? How long did it take you to address it? And that kind of thing. With the character and fitness as it relates to maybe a criminal background, you'd want to include what are the facts behind it. I do very little about making excuses for the actions, just provide the facts of what happened. Where if you were arrested or detained or there were any charges filed, provide that information, and what was the ultimate disposition. What did the court do? What did you have to do? What did you do as part of the probation? All of that information, make sure you include it, because otherwise the committee is left wondering. So you want to be very thorough in the academic probation piece and in any character and fitness explanation. Rachel? Did you have
Excuse
something?
me, I put my hand up a moment ago before I spoke, and then I spoke, and I don't know how to take that off.
I'll lower it. I thought you had just raised your hand. Okay. Does anybody else want to include anything else? Okay, Alejandra had noticed a low GPA, but an LSAT score of 169.
I have a question.
Sure.
Between both the resumes, I know that people only look at resumes for about like 6 seconds. How would you put more information and description without it being too long? Because I noticed that Goofy's was a little short and didn't give that much, but the other ones kind of seemed a little bit long. I didn't know if that was too long.
I happen to have a favorite resume in this pile, and maybe it's the one that you might be referring to. Bambi has a complete resume, and I think career services a lot of times and career development a lot of times will say keep your resume to 1 page, and I think historically that's true for jobs. When you are applying to law school, the law schools want to know your employment history, but the Board of Bar Examiners will also want to know your employment history. And all of the information that you provide in your application has to be consistent with the information you're later going to provide to the Board of Bar Examiners. And if there's not, being in Florida, the Florida Board of Bar Examiners they don't assume that you made a mistake. They assume that you're trying to deceive them. And they start to question your candor. So as part of the application process, make sure you take the time to be complete in your responses and accurate in your responses. So when they ask you, where were you employed? What period of time were you employed at that job? Go back and do your homework to look at when that happened, because when you include it for the Board of Bar Examiners, any inconsistencies is going to require you to amend your application for the law school. And hopefully you do that before you complete your Board of Bar Examiners application, but a lot of times you didn't, and it becomes a back and forth. You will save more time in doing your homework now and applying to law school than waiting for later. You want to include the skills to be more direct about the response and why Bambi's resume is probably better. You want to include the skills that you did at that job, because it allows for the admissions committee to look at, at the end of the day, we're looking for certain skills and certain things for a student to excel in law school. So did you do some of those in your prior employment? And being more complete in the skills that you completed and what have not gives us a better picture of your background, of your abilities, versus I just worked here, if that makes sense. And I forgot who asked that question, but that's a good observation. But we know that career development will often say, do it in 1 page, not for law school purposes. Dean Heck, I don't know if you all have a different approach. You are muted.
Thank you.
It's pretty similar and stuff for us at Richmond, but it's always a good question when you're looking at law schools to just ask them if they have a page limit to the resume, because there may be some out there that do. This is one of those things that falls in that gray area, so it never hurts to ask. I think the other question we get asked a lot, though, is how far back do I go? And really, you don't want to go back to high school, stop kind of at college. The only thing that I say, though, is if there's something that has spanned your whole life, like you're an Eagle Scout or you've been a dancer your whole life, or something that is, extraordinary, absolutely put that on your resume. I also got asked the question yesterday about the skills and should they put that on, and they felt like that was a little weird. And I said, no, because it actually also helps us to know, what do you like to do outside of work and school? Do you have balance to your life, and are there other things? Now, you don't probably need to put on your resume your skill set that you're proficient in Microsoft Word or something like that. We would like to make those assumptions. But as far as, even skills or hobbies or extracurricular activities or just things you like to do, it never hurts to add all of that stuff. Good question, Allie. Okay, are we ready to move on to the next one? So what about Donald? What did you guys see about Donald?
Anybody?
Somebody saw something about Donald. Good, bad?
Donald, he had a pretty good GPA, except like his LSAT was a little low, and he had a constant LSAT score. And he had several attempts, which means he was trying, and it showed me that he had the effort to put in the work because he was willing to take so many tests.
And one thing I just always like to point out and stuff too, when you take mini tests, you want to make sure you have time in between to study. So it's one thing, as you notice, 147, and that may have just been his luck, because even between, February of 18 and September of 18, the score didn't change. But when we see students sometimes that continue to take the LSAT and have no change, did you really have time to stop in between tests and get your test results and regroup and learn from that experience, so that you're not just continually to sign up each time? Good thing. Other things, guys.
Nothing?
Anything on this resume?
His volunteer, sorry.
No, go ahead. I was spelling.
His volunteer work was pretty good to me. He made the Dean's List, and he was part of the Visits Club. But yeah, that's about it for me. And I think he got his Gmail wrong, and I don't think he spell checked his resume.
Okay. So spelling, as someone said in the chat, I know it's small. Spelling errors are not small. They may seem small, but part of the whole application process and in looking at these files today, we want you to pick them apart, because this is going to be what helps make your application better. You're going to see things of like, oh, I wish they should have done that different. Maybe I should do some things different. It is very common for us to get spelling errors, grammatical errors, personal statements addressed to the wrong law school. That is a huge no-no, because basically not only does it have those errors, but what it's telling me is that you don't pay attention to detail. You didn't take the time in your application to review it, to look through things, to make sure there were not errors. And you wouldn't do that in practice. So why would you want to do that now in your actual application? I know this process is a long, stressful process. And sometimes by the time we get to the end, we just want it done. We want to get it in. But you also need to really make sure that you take time to go through everything. So it looks like we have some comments in the chat too. Reagan, his essay was not professional, lots of typos, and some very weirdly phrased points. I'm ready to play with trash, for example. Several agreeing that the essay was a little short, definitely a little bit short. We don't have the exact prompt on this, but this is something that you want to take available space. We get asked the question a lot of times, should I write a diversity statement? Should I write other statements? It depends. Each part of your application should be showing us something new. So if there's more that you have to show us, you should most definitely attach one of those other statements or a diversity statement or something. If you're just writing to write, that doesn't really help us in the decision process.
I also want to point out, because Shreya raises a good point. Shreya actually liked that the resume was consistent with his environmental background. So I think an important piece to take away is that the admissions committee, a lot of different people, each school is going to have a different approach within each school. The committee is intentionally diverse in a lot of different ways. So you want to be careful with a few things. One is somebody might like it. So because some of us may think this essay had the word trash in it too much, or it was very focused on trash, the background is environmental law. So somebody might see that, and maybe the environmental law professor takes a liking to it, like Shreya's did. The other thing is, you also, in a lot of ways, want to be neutral in, political and over politicizing or anything like that. Doesn't mean that you can't put political interest that you have in your resume if you had certain organizations or a senator or what have that. All of that is good experience, but be careful what you put, because every committee member, not that anybody should hold it against you, because they shouldn't, but you know, you never know how it comes across. But the important piece is that there's a lot of different people who are going to look at your application. The consistency is be careful, proofread, edit. Those I think are consistent. One of the examples that I like to use is you're going to be going to law school. And you want to be a lawyer. So a couple of things to think about, your approaches to take with your application is be an advocate for yourself, but also be thorough. Treat it as your first case. So if this is your first case, put in all of the effort that you would put in a case, prepare for the case before you start writing. Don't just throw your personal statement together. Think about what you would want to write, what you want the committee to know about you. You know, think about all of those things as you prepare your application.
Okay, so next up, what about Thumper? Anyone have any feelings towards Thumper's application?
Academic dishonesty.
Okay. And what did you think about the explanation of that, Chris?
Well, I don't know. I just have, I gotta get back to that file real fast. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
But I have concerns with academic dishonesty. Yes, their GPA looked nice, but how many times did they get away with academic dishonesty and not get caught? Mm-hmm. Is that GPA really a true reflection of their academic performance, or was it a oh, I got caught this time, so I'm going to disclose it, and I've really done this a dozen times in the past?
Wait, but if you read like the document, this is not like a great paragraph by any means. Like the last two sentences, I took my disgusting grade to this day. I know I did nothing wrong, which is a little disappointing.
Yeah, no personal accountability.
Right.
How are you to hold other people accountable as a lawyer if you can't hold your own actions accountable?
Well, more importantly, how are you supposed to hold yourself accountable as a lawyer, because you do have that responsibility of candor. You know, if you're not accepting your, and I will say that's one of the things the board of bar examiners will look at. You know, that you've taken accountability for it, that you've taken responsibility, that you are remorseful, and that you've grown from it. So if anybody had to have anything or explain something like this, remember those keywords. You know, they're looking that you've been remorseful and that you've grown from the point.
Dustin, did you have a point to make?
Yeah, a 170 GPA, I think is GPA. A 170 LSAT score is a pretty good sign that the GPA actually could have been made honestly, because that's really high.
And that could be correct, yes. With it only being one score, we don't know if maybe he just got lucky on his scoring, or whether or not, and I know this is probably a bit far-fetched in conspiracy theory, but how do we know he's the one that actually took that LSAT? I mean, if he's done academic dishonesty before, maybe a good fake ID got somebody else take the LSAT for him, you know?
I find a common theme around even his resume. I mean, I think definitely the academic dishonesty is something to take into account, and his addendum did not, you know, really accept responsibility for it at all. As far as the LSAT score, I feel like since it matches his GPA, it can show that he took the time to study. He only wanted to take it once, and, you know, it just shows his determination. But even though his resume is impressive, there's a general, like, sense of very competitive, very like boosted ego, which is not necessarily negative, but he just sounds very like full of himself. It's what I get off of his resume and his statements.
I'm going to take a couple other hands, and I apologize if I pronounce names wrong. Is it Shreyas?
Yeah, Shreyas. I actually don't believe large parts of the resume. Like starting off, like there's a lot of there's some spelling mistakes as well. But on top of that, like weaknesses, none. That just seems like a bit much. Also, I don't believe that this person, as an intern, single-handedly transitioned the Department of Labor into an electronic filing system. That just seems a bit unrealistic. And if they actually were, I'd want a much more bigger explanation on it. And finally, they didn't actually list any organizations. They just said, trust me, I was in organizations, a lot of them. I didn't actually name any.
Good call. And Mackenzie?
Yeah, I was gonna say something similar about the resume. It just seems, because like all the jobs he has listed, he had them while he was in college, which makes sense, but he didn't really keep any of them for longer than like a summer or more than a year. So I feel like that doesn't really give much in terms of like, oh, is he a reliable person to have as like a student too, if he couldn't keep a job for a longer period than like a couple months.
Or maybe his personality. See how many conclusions we draw from, incomplete information. Alejandra?
I do just want to point out, even though his resume comes off a little harsh, if you compare his About Me to, I think it was Goofy's, who like his objective was just get into a top tier law school. This About Me actually tells you a little bit about his goals. So like, what does he want to do? He's hardworking, he's successful, he's a part-time comedian, as opposed to Goofy's, which was just, I want to get into a law school. You don't know anything else about him or about his goals or kind of what he wants to do. So I think if there's anything we can rescue from Thumper is, that was a pretty good insight.
I think we have opposite ends of the spectrum here. We have somebody who is overconfident and is focused on becoming the next Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and the other one's just saying, I want to go to law school. Like there needs to be, we have, not to polarize politics, but we have left wing, right wing. We have no moderate here. We have no center of the road application. That's a nice blend of the two.
Chris, I'm going to take that you're not going to admit Thumper.
I don't like dishonesty and lack of personal responsibility.
But I think that's one of the things we want to point out. So when you are submitting your file to committees, you don't know who's going to read your file. You don't know who's going to form what opinions. You don't know who's going to take missing information and make their own assumptions. So that's why a lot of times we really say, like, if there's what you would think of as red flags, explain it, or otherwise you're throwing me into a situation where I have to make an assumption. But also being on a committee right now, let's just pretend we all really were on the committee. This file may get more discussion and everything else, and half of the room may say no academic dishonesty, and the other half may say look at the LSAT score like some of you had. So it really just depends on what it kind of looks like and what it comes down to. So when you're putting together your application, you want to make sure not only all of these errors that we're finding, but that you come across with the right tone and you don't have any of these assumptions that we're starting to. So we are starting to run a little lower on time. We still got plenty of time, but we got a lot to cover. So we're going to go ahead and jump over. We talked a little bit about Bambi's resume, but what did you guys find about Bambi?
Bambi's not a United States citizen.
Okay. So for those of you who may not have caught it, there is a DACA statement in Bambi's. Yes, Mackenzie, you started to say something.
I don't think the citizenship thing matters as much, though, because I don't think Donald Duck was from the United States either.
Correct.
Did we notice anything else?
His resume was a bit long.
Okay.
I don't know. I saw like it had like a lot of bullet points, and I guess bullet points are good for skimming to a certain extent, but like it was too much for each of the jobs or activities that he did.
Okay.
And sometimes with resumes and stuff too, we talked a little bit about putting a lot of stuff on. There's going to be some things that are more common to individuals that if you said you were, if you said you were president of an organization, we can make a lot of assumptions sometimes of what that might look like. But let's say you were the volunteer chair and we don't know that you actually supervised over 500 people to do 3,000 hours of community service or that kind of thing. So sometimes bullet points can be a good thing to help describe different things if you think that individuals may not know what it is or may not really know how much time really goes into that. One of the things with the resumes we look at too is we're trying to compare your transcripts and going to school at the same time of, were you working to put yourself through school? Were you doing all of these extracurricular activities? Where was your time going? So that's something to kind of keep in mind. We have a question in the chat from Ava. How long should an addendum be? These have been fairly short and I was expecting maybe a half page at least. Is that long? Dean Fonseca-Nader, you want to take that one?
Well, I'll begin with, it depends. The addendum should be as long as you need to make the explanation. So perhaps to explain that your DACA and just give short background, perhaps your personal statement had given some of the background, but had not identified DACA, that could possibly be a short one. On the academic probation that we saw earlier, that probably needed more information. What semester, what happened, were you on probation? Did you get out of it? That there you would have to include probably more information. On a character and fitness where you might have been arrested or you had a dorm room violation or something of that nature, that's probably going to require more information because you need to include the facts. What happened? Did you come before the dean of students? Were you arrested? Were you expelled? Were you suspended? How long were you suspended for? What did you do during that period of time? So truthfully, it really depends on the subject matter.
So one of the other questions is, do we need to have an objectivity statement? I thought they were obsolete more recently. This honestly is another, it depends. And part of that stems on what the application questions are. This is something we really try and drive home a lot about. You cannot read the instructions enough on every law school application because you may think like, oh, this one said 2-page resume. Oh, the other one said 2-page. But did you really read? Like, were there other things that they wanted to cover? Where we see a lot of students get into trouble with this is on our character and fitness questions. Each school has completely different character and fitness. A lot of times these questions are designed to match the bar and simulate the questions that you're going to get later on, because when you all apply to law school and then you apply to the bar, we as applicants we as law schools are going to take your application and give it to the bar, and they're going to cross compare the character and fitness. And if they find something that you did not tell us as a law school, they come back to us and say, had you known this, would you have admitted this person? I've been doing this 16 years now, and sometimes my answer has been no, I would not have admitted this person. And there are a couple that never were able to sit for the bar. So it's one of those things that something that is small can get drawn out of large proportion because you didn't tell us. And sometimes I've had students that literally just did not read the questions because they thought, oh, it said this. So really read the entire application and the instructions, see what they're exactly asking of you, and make sure that you're not just making that it's the same assumption as another application.
There's a question in the chat from Willis. Willis, could you explain your question a little bit? I don't know what earlier meant.
Yes, ma'am. So my question is, for instance, if you have an employment type, I know it was talked about earlier as far as showcasing how you spend your time and the importance of that. And if you were to, for instance, do, I guess, volunteer service or something of that nature, or with extracurriculars or anything like that, then is it an option to put the number of hours on average that you spend as part of that organization per week? For instance, if I volunteer at a foster home, but I do that about 20 hours per week, then would you put it like in parentheses 20 hours per week? Is that something that people do?
Yes.
Or what's a good way of showcasing that?
We see a wide variety of that. I mean, if it's something like it's an hour here or there, no. We probably see hours used more specifically when it's work employment, whether it's part-time or full-time, or whether specifically volunteer hours. So you can most definitely add that to your resume. Each school is going to be a little bit different. You just want to make sure that it's clear and easy to read. So it doesn't really matter if it's in parentheses or not. You can just kind of use that as a description of what the job is and make that work. That's something that's very easy and stuff to do. I do want to add one more thing that I just thought of when you were talking about hours. During COVID, we've had a lot more people come to us with resumes about jobs they were supposed to have last summer that then fell through because of COVID. And some are like, can I still put that on my resume? Now, each law school may tell you a different answer. I'm going to tell you from my personal point, don't put it on your resume. If you want to attach an addendum that talks about, other opportunities that may have been there, but what happens a lot of times, if you put it on your resume and then it was like, not able to perform or something like that, going back to Dean Fonseca's point later, when the bar may look at your resume, it can cause a lot of confusion of, well, did you said you did this, and you're like, oh no, there was the notation of COVID and maybe it didn't get read. So it's okay to tell us if some of that stuff kind of happened, but I wouldn't put it on the resume because you didn't actually fulfill and end up doing that job.
I'm going to agree with that. So one of the things the Board of Bar Examiners does is they send a letter of character and fitness to every employer that you've ever had. So if you ended up not going to the employment, they're going to look at the records and they're going to say this person never worked here because you never actually ended up being hired, even you never ended up working there, even though you were hired. Those might be two different people. So the left hand might not speak to the right hand. So now it becomes back to being a candor issue for you. I actually might include a COVID type addendum in a situation like that, and maybe includes, that it was affected by COVID, but that you had received it. Maybe you include the letter or the offer or the email as evidence of that. But I agree with Dean Heck. Do not put it on your resume. Oh, go ahead. Were you going to add something?
No, go ahead. If you want to take that question, and then we'll get on to the last file. Go ahead.
The answer is yes. Any school that you attended, even if it was during high school, you need the transcripts because those are grades that are being included as part of your college GPA. The other thing that I think Dean Heck may have mentioned it earlier, your GPA gets recalculated by LSAC. So if you have grade replacement or anything of that nature, every single grade that you've ever gotten is calculated. So not just your, last college GPA that some of you may have that may be a little bit higher. So just keep that in mind.
And that goes for, you need to submit all coursework. So if some of you have taken master's courses or if some of you end up doing some other programs and stuff, all transcripts of any sort. Now, the GPA will only calculate up to that first undergraduate degree. So if you take stuff after that, it won't be on, but we still need to get the transcripts. And Mackenzie, your question, do you think that law school admissions will change after COVID? Do you think they will be more flexible with gaps in timelines for jobs, organizations? I know many undergraduate students struggled switching to completely online such short notice. So, this goes back to kind of the point of, as admissions committees, we're also human beings. And this is where we just like explanations and stuff on things. If I look at a resume and see somebody really involved and then like a 2-year gap, I wonder like what happened. And a simple explanation of, it was COVID or something like that. It's hard for us to keep track what colleges did what, as well as, we're all in different parts of the country. So it never hurts to explain that a little bit more in the process. Now, we are all used to seeing pass fails and stuff too for last spring. However, if you had all passes in one grade, I'm going to ask, why was that one class graded? Or if, you ended up with withdrawing from a bunch of courses, it just, whatever the situation is, it never hurts to ask the school, can I go ahead and do an explanation and stuff? And if you didn't have a summer internship, last thing on this kind of kick and stuff too, not finding a summer internship is completely okay. We know that COVID changed a lot of that and you didn't have one, and that is just fine. Again, it all goes back to the explanation. Tell us what you did do, and if you didn't end up working and you took classes, or you just decided to, make yourself a better person and really get into fitness, at least you're getting involved in putting skill set of some sort on the resume.
And I want to clarify, the transcript is not your high school transcript. Even though those grades went into your high school, those were actually college credits. So it's the university that you went to and not your high school. So those dual enrollments, in response to my earlier, to the earlier question about dual enrollment and getting those transcripts, you do, because those were actually college credits, not just high school credits. Okay.
Okay, so last file, and then we're gonna regroup. So Minnie.
Dean Heck, could we go back to Bambi 1 second? Because one of the things about Bambi, and you have one of these, is the early decision. Could you just tell them a little bit about early decision?
Yes. So sorry, I forgot that part. So this application actually asked if they were seeking what type of decision, and the person put early decision binding. Some schools have early decision binding programs. We do at Richmond, and it's one of those things that if you are admitted, then you automatically are coming to Richmond. All other applications must be withdrawn off the table. You know that Richmond is 110% where you want to be. So early decision binding programs, if you are thinking about applying to one, you can only apply to one. It is the school that, beyond a shadow of a doubt, whatever scholarship they give you, whatever the case may be, you are going to this school. So we always ask students, make sure you read. If this is what you want to do, make sure you and understand the program, what the pros and cons and stuff are. It varies a little bit from school to school what that looks like, but you do want to make sure, because if you apply early decision binding and then are like, I'm not coming, the school can file misconduct charges on you, which can lead to a much, much more complicated process, potentially losing other law school admissions, and something that's going to follow you into your character and fitness on the bar and everything else. So again, it goes back to kind of that reading point, and make sure that you really read the instructions and stuff in an application. Okay, Minnie, and then we'll get back to the chat questions. What did you guys think of Minnie?
I liked her criminal addendum. It really explained it pretty well, and it was pretty concise.
Good call. What else? Nicola?
I felt like there was a bit overemphasis on the petty crime, because she includes a criminal addendum, but she also includes in her personal statement a lot. So she's like double dipping about her petty theft.
Okay. And sometimes we're going to see that. Back to kind of the point, it always has to go into an addendum. So make sure you don't not put the addendum. The personal statement can be something that we can work through and stuff a little bit, but always make sure you at least have the addendum portion and stuff of it. See a comment that the resume seems short. Another pretty short resume.
On a resume, just personally, because I'm an employer, I like seeing, I don't want to see a bullet list. I checked out customers. Okay. I provided, professional customer service experience, or something like use more action words and more, what did you do? Not just, I checked out customers.
Right. That's actually a very good point.
I can also notice on the resume that the organization is not good. For example, on the political science, or like on her studies, she has it has an indent on the political science and government that should be all the way to the left. Also on the day side, that should be all the way to the right, and she just put it like in the middle. One more space on the right side, other one a little bit space on the left. So that should be like
organized pretty well. And I can see that here.
And Ava asked the question, should the resume, some resumes looked more colorful, which is preferable? I'm going to say the thing that I don't want to see on your resume is your picture. Thumper had his picture. We don't want to see your picture on your resume, so definitely don't do that. As opposed to whether you do it in black and white or color, there's not one that we're like, oh, you have to do this. I think sometimes individuals forget when students are coming to law school, you guys are coming from a wide variety of backgrounds and, majors and experiences and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes I will see the more colorful resumes or that kind of stuff that are my marketing and journalism and that sort of folks, where my engineering and mathematics folks are going to be very straightforward. So we just want it to look in a format that's consistent, that looks nice, that doesn't have misspelling, but it doesn't have to be in color. It doesn't mean go out and hire someone to, make your resume over or anything like that. Mackenzie, you had a question.
Yeah, I thought her essay was really good. Like, it got off kind of odd, but going through and reading it and then going to the criminal addendum, I thought you could really show that she has grown a lot, and it showed her character now versus she did really feel bad about stealing when she was younger.
Okay, good point.
Ella.
Yeah, so in her resume, the very top bullet point for Fordham University, she talks about how she performed research. And I think that would be something maybe that a committee would look at closely and they'd be curious about. But I wish that it had been spoken a little teeny bit more to in her resume, given that it's only one page.
Jason?
Again, with her resume, she did have a lot of room on the page where she could have elaborated on things. Like for the volunteer work, for example, I think that was a good section where she could have said more community service hours, or it just said 150 hours. I think she could have explained what exactly she did for Relay for Life and bake sales, to maybe explain how she's giving back to the community or something like that, especially since there is a lot of room on the page to elaborate.
Chris.
In reference to the resume, because I don't know, I work in a governmental job and we do hiring boards. So the panel consists of anywhere from 5 to 7 people for the interview. And so when I receive a resume, I copy that. So going back to the coloring side of things, are there multiple copies of the resume made to send to multiple people that's on that panel? Because if so, then the color issue may become a legibility issue depending on contrasting and stuff like that.
So that is a good point to point out. I'm going to say that it most likely doesn't happen as often. And this is just going to be the reason why. Many law schools are paperless. So when you guys apply, and you've seen me kind of scrolling through the PDF today, that's actually what it looks like to us. We're going to get one batch of document that's going to have the application and all of your attachments. So when you were hitting submit after the cart, it's going to have it all as one big pack. Then we're going to get the pack of the CAS report pack from LSAC that's going to have that cover sheet, transcripts, LSAT scores, and all of that kind of stuff. Now, some offices, the admissions committees read fully online. That's our office, has been for years. There are some schools out there that still print files to go to the committee. So that is something to keep in mind. I would say the majority probably still are electronic, but there are some pretty large schools and stuff that will still print those files and stuff, and keeping in mind. And that's one of the things and stuff too. We haven't talked a lot. We've talked a lot about resumes and stuff today, is when you're putting together your entire packet, don't just think the resume and the personal statement, but look at all of it. It never hurts on your personal statement and those things that don't have your name on them to put either your L number at the top of the page or to put your name or something, because just if it were a school that got printed, if something fell out, everything would be there kind of intact. It doesn't have to have page numbers. It doesn't have to have any of that kind of stuff, but you do want to make sure when you're putting it all together that it flows from one to the next, which is also why, on Goofy's, you guys saw blank pages. That's how we would see it. So if a page accidentally gets detached, that's coming into us too. And we're just going to have to scroll through a bunch of blank pages before we would get to the next piece and stuff of the puzzle.
So Willis has his hand up.
Okay.
Yes, good afternoon again. So my question is kind of a follow-up from what the previous person had said about how the person could have elaborated on a lot of the items as far as work experience and volunteer work. But specifically for volunteer work, this is my question. Then would you recommend listing out the volunteer companies as employers, like in the same formatting?
I would put it in a volunteer section. So that way it is clearly different than actual paid employment. But you can design. So, I see several questions in the chat too. What kind of resume formatting and all of that kind of stuff. And when we leave today, because we're running short on time, we'll make sure that we give our email address to all of you guys. So if you have questions, please follow up. That's why we're here. We both also will have our booths tonight at 4:30. So you're more than welcome to stop by there too. But part of when you guys are thinking the formats and everything else, just think, one, if someone didn't know you, could they truly understand everything that's on here and it actually know everything that they needed to? Two, is it in a format that's easy to read? Lines, formatting, dates, everything's kind of in the same style frame. It's not 50 different fonts or all over the place. And three, does it really describe who you are and is accurate and is not lying in any form where someone could assume that you had these other things or other jobs just because they were listed in a different format and stuff? We could talk resumes all day long because, we get thousands of applications each year and see many, many different resumes. There's not a standard form. I usually encourage students to kind of steer clear of the Microsoft Word automatic fonts, or not the automatic fonts, but the automatic formatting that you can actually go into Microsoft Word and do the templates. Sorry, templates was the word I was looking for there. Just because when you're editing it, there can be a lot of issues. And so kind of like the goofy one that you saw, that was actually a Microsoft Word template. Just in case anyone was confused today, all of these were fake files. We did not mention that earlier, but just in case anyone was confused. And so it is one of those things that you want to make sure that at the end of the day, it's formatted and stuff. So
one more thing I do want to, Georgia asked if we include seasonal and temporary jobs and work experience, and the answer is yes, because any job that you did, perhaps you want to put in parentheses that it's seasonal, so that nobody questions why you were only there for 6 months. You might want to include that it's seasonal. So definitely include it.
So we are running short on time, so I'm going to kind of lump a couple of things in together so Dean Fonseca-Nader and I can discuss a couple of things. The biggest thing is, guys, don't be bashful. You guys know you want to go to law school. You're in PAD. You're getting a lot of valuable information. We would much rather you come to us as law schools and ask very specific questions, either about just in general about the process or about our school specifically before you go to Reddit. Come to us. Let us give you the accurate information of what's actually happening. Some of you are going to apply to 1 or 2 schools. Some of you are going to apply to 10 or 11 schools. And there's going to be some consistent themes, but it never hurts to talk to the school. That's why we do these things and stuff. So let's just think a minute. We went through 5 files today. We went through a lot, had a few technical difficulties that we worked through. But if someone told you right now, you've read all of these files. If someone told you right now, you only got to pick 2 of those files and they gave you actual scores, let's say our school, our fake school today, fake PAD University, that the median was a 161 3.5, which 2 files would you take? We don't really have time to get back into breakout rooms, so I asked some of that as a question to you individually. There was a wide range of scores and stuff today. There's some that had really high GPAs, like you think about Donald, he was a 3.9, but he had a 147. You think about Thumper, he was a 173.9, but he had all of that academic issues and dishonesty that some of us didn't like. So if you only had 2 to pick, what 2 would those be? Someone in the chat said maybe Minnie and Goofy. Other things, if I said to you right now, it's March, we may only have 2 seats, and that's why I'm telling you 2. If it's November, we're just getting started, maybe I have 4 seats. So we say that as when you're putting together your application, part of this comes down to the timing and stuff too. You don't want your application to be like Goofy and have all these extra pages. I hope your application doesn't have an addendum that says that you didn't do anything wrong, because obviously you did something wrong, if you're writing the addendum in that fashion. But we go through some of these files to really make you stop and think, if you're on our side, and what if you're sitting in the committee and you're a person that really hates academic dishonesty and the rest of the committee really wants to admit that person? I've seen some knockdown, drag out fights in admissions committee in my 16 years. It can happen with some pretty strong-minded individuals. So we want to make sure when you do your application that you're not having a lot of these glaring errors and stuff that you've seen today. And I guarantee, and I challenge you, go back through some of these files the next couple of days. You're going to find a lot more errors. You're going to find a lot more things that could have been done and stuff a little bit better. Dean Fonseca?
Yep. What I want to add is we hope that from this exercise, because it's always easier to be more critical of others, that we go back to our own applications, our own personal statements, and be that strong with our personal statements and strategize as you're preparing your application. So each part of your application, take the time to talk a little bit about yourself. So we have your resume, so don't use your personal statement to talk about or summarize your employment history. Now, there might be certain things that really go to who you are today that you did as part of your work history and what have not. That's fine to talk about it and include it, but don't summarize your work history. Don't summarize your academic history. We see that in your transcripts. We see that in your resume. Use your personal statement to add something else. Use a diversity statement to add something else. So keep that in mind and strategize really that you leave the committee with a real complete picture of who you are and who you want them to consider for law school and for their school.
And the other thing I'm going to say, you met the two of us today. I don't think we seemed like scary people. We are humans in this process, and we are here because we enjoy doing this. And we know you're going to have different questions at different points. Over the next couple of days, you have a lot of different presentations. I challenge you tonight at the law fair, go see 4 or 5 schools that weren't even on your list. I mean, go talk to them. What does it hurt? You know, one thing that COVID has really stunk in a lot of ways. In other ways, you have a lot of opportunities to get to do some things virtually and talk to some places that you couldn't have maybe traveled to at the time. So use that to your benefit to really look things out. I put in the chat, Dean Fonseca-Nader, and my email. I put it because we truly mean it when we say email us. We didn't get to all of the questions today. So if something came up, you were either too bashful to ask or, you know, we just didn't get to, please let us know. We're happy to help and stuff in that capacity.
And thank you for spending your afternoon with us. This goes a long way as you begin your legal career.
And I will add one more thing. Thank you for turning your cameras on. As we had the discussion the other day, especially when you're in on some of these presentations or going to law fairs and that kind of thing, this is your chance for a face-to-face conversation. First off, it really helps us as presenters that we're not just staring at black screens. And I know it's not always easy. Sometimes we're in bad situations and we can't really turn the camera on, or we're at work, or we've got 5 people in the background or whatever. But just really think about that sometimes. It's really good to start that interaction and stuff as much as possible. So I challenge you over the next couple of days, turn your cameras on, your presenters will thank you, and you get to see each other. Much